Thank you for joining us today for the committee chair and liaison orientation session. Today, your presenters are Joe Miller, GPA president, and myself, Mike Chamberlain, the GPA CEO. So again, thank you for your time and for your service to the community. And there we go. And there's us. So as you know, well, actually, I'll let Joe start off and talk about the role of committees and a little bit of an overview about today.
Sure, thanks, Mike. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. So we want to talk about the 3 C's of being a committee chair, and they're really crucial to our organization, to the GPA. Committees are the way that we accomplish the goals of the organization through our staff, and a lot of the work through our committees. And our strategic plan reflects that, and the way that we implement our strategic plan reflects that. So we want to make sure that we have great communication with our committees, that we have cohesion within our committees and within the work with our committees, our board, and our staff, and that we have collaboration throughout. Sorry about that. So we want to make sure that we're providing you, each of you, with the resources, tools, and structure to support that effort, to support the cohesion, collaboration, and our communication. I can't hear you, Mike, you're muted.
That's what I get for muting myself. Thank you. So, as Joe mentioned, our committees are a crucial part of how we get work done. There are currently 9 committees and 2 task forces to help GPA get its work done. The committees are standing bodies, several of which are dictated by the GPA bylaws, and are charged with certain duties and assignments as directed by the GPA strategic plan. So task forces are rather, in opposed to a committee, a task force is a small team put together to accomplish a specific task over a defined period of time. So I'd just like to take just a couple minutes and run through the committee charges and their sources, just so everybody's clear on where these come from. So the first one is the bylaw committee, and that is mandated by the GPA bylaws to receive proposed changes to the bylaws, review them, as well as look at the chapter bylaws. So they look at all elements of the bylaws and look at ways that need to be adjusted or improved, and they also consider any recommendations from GPA members to changes to the bylaws. The Chapter Advisory Committee provides advice to the CEO and directs the activities of GPA headquarters in support of our chapters, and especially as it relates to the strategic priority 3.1 of improving our chapters and growing membership in chapters. That task force, or that, excuse me, that committee has done a lot of work already and has more work ahead of it as ways to improve GPA chapters. The Ethics Committee, as you might expect, is responsible for maintaining our GPA Code of Ethics and adjudicating any issues that come before it regarding concerns or issues with people potentially violating the Code of Ethics. Another element of this group is to promulgate the Code of Ethics and to make sure people understand that not only does GPA have a Code of Ethics, but it's something that we stand by and enforce. The next group is the Governmental Advocacy Committee. That's a relatively new committee, but their group is exploring the governmental advocacy needs of GPA and recommending specific steps and policies to address those needs. And we'll talk a little bit more about them later on as using them as a specific example. The Finance Committee is a committee that is responsible for oversight of the financial operations of GPA, not to the degree that the GPA Board of Directors is, but certainly one group that is responsible for overseeing our annual audit and budget process, making recommendations for changes to GPA financial policies, and providing that independent review of GPA financials. The Long Range Planning Committee is responsible for development and maintenance of our long-range plan, or the GPA strategic plan. So a lot of work has been done a couple of years ago on that, and now they're basically in kind of the maintenance mode and helping everybody understand how we continue to move forward with our strategic plan. The nominating committee is responsible for developing and managing procedures for recruiting and electing our board members, and going through that process of helping to identify candidates and looking at developing the leadership pipeline so that we have a good crew of members coming through the ranks and being identified for potential board service and leadership service in the organization.
Okay. I can't go.
Professional growth and development is responsible for developing our educational curriculum and working especially with elements like the program at the educational program for the annual conference, our webinar schedule, and working on developing a curriculum for the profession. They are also charged with oversight for the GPA approved trainer program. The Publications Committee provides leadership on all of GPA's publications, including the journal, strategy papers, and our weekly grant news. And we do have two task forces currently. The first one is the Mentoring Task Force, which is working on developing a professional mentoring program for GPA members. They've done a spectacular job on that the last 2 years in developing this program, and still looking for ways to improve it. So if you're thinking about being a mentor, I'll put my plug in right now for that. They're always looking for good people, and obviously you as leaders in the organization would be great people to mentor somebody. The other group is our Pioneer Award Task Force. Their primary role in the past has been soliciting nominees and recipients for the Pioneer Award for grant makers. But one of the things that they've been charged with is taking a good look at that program to make sure that it's meeting the needs and meeting the expectations of the concept behind the Pioneer Award. So that's a quick overview of our committees and task forces. As I mentioned before, we have the GPA strategic plan, which was approved by the GPA board in November of 2018. It is our 2018 to our 2020 strategic plan. There are 4 major categories within the strategic plan. They are outlined on your screen. It's establish GPA as the recognized authority, provide education and professional development, increase and retain GPA members, and advance the governance and infrastructure of GPA. And within those 4 larger categories, there are primary objectives within those. So in the first group is that recognized authority and preeminent resource. So you'll see on the screen there are the 6 key areas of action for supporting this strategic priority. Just to highlight a couple of them, the maintain and market the value of GPA, to establish GPA as the authority and go-to organization. One of the elements of that that's currently being worked on at the direction of the board is the development of a comprehensive marketing plan for GPA. So we are in the process of working with an outside consultant to do research and develop that plan. So that's one element that not necessarily tied to a committee, but certainly something you'll be hearing about in the coming year. And it may be something that comes down to your committee in terms of recommendations of how we continue to advance that. The second area is provide education, professional development opportunities. Again, looking at the comprehensive professional development program, looking at all of the elements of education that GPA provides, furthering and developing our leadership program for GPA and chapter leadership, chapter volunteers. And then lastly in that category is evaluating the feasibility of developing that standardized curriculum that can be used as a formal ground for grant training. For those of you who are at the annual conference, you might have heard Phil Reniger talk about the fact that one of the visions of the founders was that there would someday be a grants program in informal education. So this might be one of those first steps towards that. So we continue to look at that and see what the right direction is for that. In the third category, which is increase and retain GPA membership, it's about support for our chapters. It's about continuing to define and refine membership programs and services for our members and provide valuable resources through a number of channels for our members. And in the fourth category then is advance the governance and infrastructure. And that really is about maintaining the support structure to advance the remaining parts of the strategic plan. So it's about evaluating not only the strategic plan on a regular basis, but do we have the right governance and structure? Or do we have the right resources from a staff perspective? And are we developing future leaders for the organization? So that's just a brief overview of our strategic plan, and obviously I've sent that to you so you can look at all the finite details as we go further with this. So part of the reason to cover the strategic plan as well is to let you know as committee leaders that one of the elements that you will be working on and have worked on in the past is the development of work plans. So I'll turn it over to Joe to talk about our work plan process.
Thanks, Mike. As a way to help the committees and task forces to support the GPA strategic plan, the board has assigned individual items from the GPA strategic plan to the committees, task forces, and to the staff. And each committee will need to review their 2018 work plan to determine which actions have been taken, which items have been taken, have been completed, which items are in progress, which items still need to be addressed. And after this review, the committee will need to create a work plan for year 2 to 4. For the year, 2 to 4 items for the year. Sorry, year 2 to 4. Our strategic plan is 3 years. So sorry, I misread that. So you'll need to pick 2 to 4 items to do for this coming year, and the task force will focus on completing those items over the next year. Now, one example that we have, the Government Advocacy Committee completed work on policy statements in 2018 and will begin to work on developing advocacy toolkits for the GPA members and chapters under Strategic Plan 1.6. So when I say Strategic Plan 1.6, if you were looking at those items in those slides that Mike presented just a little bit ago, you could see those numbers next to it. So refer back to those numbers. And even earlier when he was talking about the task force on those slides, you could see in parentheses which things were allotted and where those assignments come from and where those elements come from in accordance with the strategic plan. So your staff liaison will have a template to use for your work plan, and the committee or task force will report on the progress of the committee work plan progress report form prior to each board meeting. Each committee is comprised of committee members, a chair, a board liaison, and a staff liaison. And we'll cover the role and responsibilities of the board liaison on the next slide. Please, Mike. Thank you. All right, so each committee and task force, again, has been assigned a board member to serve as a board liaison to the committee. And these are the roles and responsibilities of the board liaison. Right? So the liaison from and to the board of directors, so one of the board members is assigned to your committee, and they'll provide guidance to the committee chair. They'll serve as an active member of the committee. They will assist with the preparation of the board report and request for board agenda items. And again, we have some templates for that as well. And they'll present those reports and agenda items to the board at the board meetings. And then they'll report back to the committee as to what the board, what actions the board took on those items. So each committee and task force has a chair selected by the GPA president to serve as the leader of the committee or the task force, and the chair is the lead of the committee task force. Now, here are the roles and responsibilities of the chair. We have again, to lead the committee and task force, prepare and distribute meeting agendas, prepare and distribute the meeting notes, serve as an active member of the committee, prepare the board report and request for board agenda items and forms with assistance from the board and staff liaisons, and then work with the subcommittee chairs to make sure that the work is being accomplished and submit budget reports. Now I'm going to have Mike cover the staff liaison and what the staff liaison's role is for those committees.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
As Joe mentioned, that with the board liaisons, the staff liaisons also serve an important role for your committees and task forces. So they are a resource for you and a conduit of information for the committee and the GPA headquarters staff. So not only can they provide sometimes that historical expertise in terms of what work has been done by the committee or task force in the past, but also provide that sense of historical perspective and continuity. So just kind of, again, serving as resources from GPA headquarters, which could include providing, and we'll get into this a little bit further down the road, conference calling resources, Dropbox or Google Drive resources, looking for historical documents or records that we might have at headquarters. They do serve as an active non-voting member of the committee or task force, so please involve your staff liaisons in the conversations you're having. But when it comes time for voting on an item to make a decision, the staff liaison is a non-voting member. And so that's important, especially as you're establishing quorum within your committee. They will be somebody who can assist you with the preparation of the progress reports and requests for board agenda items or budget items. And they also, one of the things that we do on a regular basis is collaboration among staff. We're a pretty small office staff, and we get to talk to each other on a daily basis, believe it or not. And one of the nice things is that we can share committee action with other GPA staff. So especially if there's something that perhaps, say, the ethics committee wanted to make sure that chapters were doing in terms of promoting ethics, that's certainly something that the staff can have a conversation with each other about how do we collaborate on that, and then maybe even bring it into a collaboration between the two committees. But the staff liaison can certainly serve that role and help collaborate and coordinate that activity. One of the things that I think is important to recognize, especially this year, is that we've had some turnover and change in not only committee chairs, but board liaisons as well. So a recommendation for this year might be for you as a committee chair, if you're new, or if you have a new board liaison, to work with your staff liaison to set up a transition call or a transition meeting with the staff liaison, the board liaisons, and your committee chair. It'd be a great opportunity to, as Joe was talking about earlier in terms of the work plan element, gives you an opportunity to kind of review what happened last year, where things are in progress, and kind of get off on the right foot, especially if you have a new board liaison or a new committee chair. So speaking of progress reports and requests for agenda items, the GPA board meets in person 3 times a year, in the winter, spring, and in fall, or winter, summer, fall, basically. Reports and requests are due approximately 2 weeks before the meeting. That allows the GPA president and secretary to work together to put together the board agenda and make sure that we have everything in order, and provide the background information to the GPA board of directors in advance of their meeting so that they can be prepared for the discussions. So reports and requests for items are due in that time frame. As Joe mentioned earlier, we do have templates available for the board progress reports, and that's progress on your strategic plan, work plan. So in February, and the February board meeting is on the 22nd, but we ask that your reports and requests for board agenda items be submitted by February 6th, and we will send out a reminder about that. The primary objective at that point in time is, again, to provide a report on any actions on the 2018 work plans and then to submit your 2019 work plans for your committee. I know for some committees that will be a slight modification from your 2018 work plan. For others, it will require some work to update the plan and produce a new plan for 2019. And then the other two deadline dates are there for your information in June and October for the summer and fall board meetings. I mentioned the work plan progress report, and again, that's an element that is, it's one of your responsibilities to provide that report prior to the board meeting. And it is really just to highlight and inform the GPA directors on your progress on your work plan. So on the work plan, there's a little more detail in terms of deadlines and who is doing what. On the progress report, we're really looking to see, are you making progress on your work plan? How are you moving forward? The subcommittees and their work are included on the committee's report. And again, just work with your board and staff liaisons to prepare that report. It's important to know that we are continuing to move forward on our strategic plan and the action items listed there. And it's a good way for us to, it's a good way for both the committee, staff, and the board to make sure that we're continuing to move forward on our strategic plan. So the other item that is not required but is often submitted at the same time is a request for a board agenda item. And that is something where you are asking the board for specific direction or to provide feedback to the committee or to actually take an action related to establishment of a policy or make a decision to impact GPA. So on that request for board agenda items, we request that you include a summary or a background, include what strategic plan priority this is related to or what action item that is related to. Are you requesting the board have a discussion about this item and provide feedback to the committee or task force, or are you requesting a specific action? If there's a specific action, we do ask that you include the motion with that, and also include any financial impact as well as implementation and oversight. Who will be responsible for implementing this item and long-term oversight? And we do ask you to try to estimate how much time you think it will take the board to have this discussion. I know that's always kind of a long shot guess anyhow, but we do ask you to try to estimate what that is for our planning purposes. This form would be included for new projects or programs that are not in the current budget and would need to be addressed in the current fiscal year. So, for example, if there was something that came up as a part of your action plan that was important for GPA to take action on now, you would do a request for board agenda item and definitely include the fiscal implications on that for the board to make a determination if that would require a budget adjustment for the current year or how the board would like to address that. If you have a project that will be addressed in a future year, we'd ask that you address that as part of the budget process, which occurs in the late summer. So speaking of budget, the 2019 budget was approved by the board of directors at their November meeting. Staff liaisons have access to the budget. Your staff liaison has access to the budget, so what was approved and what funds remain. So as you ask about, in particular, if a budget item is what item has been, or what funds have been used, excuse me, your staff liaison can get access to that through our accountant or through our regular reports. Again, new budget requests will be solicited in July and August as a part of our annual budgeting process. The budget then is reviewed by the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee then makes a recommendation to the GPA Board of Directors, who has final approval on the budget. So, next we'll talk just a little bit about some additional logistics. In terms of conference calls, as I mentioned earlier, staff liaison can coordinate and schedule conference calls. We have conference calling capability through our phone system at the office at no charge to committee members, or no charge. There's no charge for the conference call component of it. But in addition to that, we also have this WebEx platform as well as other platforms for group meetings, if you so desire to use those. Online resources include Grant Zone communities, Dropbox, and Google Drive. I know there's a couple committees that have set up Grant Zone communities for maintaining their documents and having conversations. If your committee does not have a Grant Zone community and wants one, contact Kelly Romero and she will work with you on what are the specifics and logistics to get that set up for your organization, for your committee. And then earlier today, Barb distributed the current rosters. So if you'll take a minute as chairs just to review those real quickly and review those with your committee members. The information on those rosters comes straight from our database. So if there's updates or changes or preferred email addresses that people want to change to, please have them contact Barb to let us know to make sure we update those records as well. So those are just a few of the logistics items. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to myself, Joe, or your staff liaison. We're happy to help and provide whatever resources we can to continue to make everyone successful and continue to move GPA forward. So again, we remain committed and focused to meeting the needs of our members and chapters and positioning GPA as the authority in the grants profession and the grants field. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to GPA and the profession, and look forward to working with you in the year ahead.